Hey there. So I want to talk about technology in general and the fact that people, it happens that sort of the more you learn about technology, sometimes there's an aspect of it that you hate more and more. It's somewhat not uncommon that people who get really into technology actually start disliking it more and more. And so what I've been doing in order to sort of try to cure myself of that, I have been teaching myself 6502 assembly. For those of you who don't know, 6502 is this chip that was used in many things in the 80s, like including the original Nintendo system, including the Apple II, for those in the UK, the BBC Micro. So, sort of the 80s home computing revolution was based on really two chips. That one and something, I think it's called Z80, Z70, Z80. And I've been teaching myself that to try to have something to love in technology because lately I kind of hate it. And so let me just talk about that. And why do I have this up? Well, this is an incognito tab. And I was making some content about Lie groups actually, but I was explaining my motivation is I have this book on Lie algebras and I want to explore it and maybe make content about it, but first we need to talk about Lie groups and yada yada yada. So I brought this up to talk about it. And the thing is, like, even though this is an incognito tab, like I noticed over here it was my actual zip code. I'm not in Hong Kong, I'm in Japan. But I had the zip code over here. And that was annoying. So, okay. I think I just covered it up at first. And then later I could cover it up by bringing this up. And then it's gone. Then later, almost right before I made the video, I realized like up here, it also had my zip code. And it's like, this is an supposed incognito tab. And yet, it's giving access to my zip code. Is it through cookies? I don't know. I don't know exactly everything that's happening, but I don't like it, you know? This is just one of many examples. So I'll rant a little about the iPhone. I have an iPhone. I hate it more and more every day. There's so many things. And you might say, well, why don't you have Android? I had an Android phone in the past, a long time ago, more than 10 years ago. Maybe Samsung phones are great now. I don't know. I mean, I hate Google. That's a whole other thing. And they're, of course, behind Android. So I totally don't trust Google for many reasons. I used to be an investor. I mean, I used to own Google shares. And so I researched about them a lot. And back in, say, like 2007 or so, they were good at search. I mean, 90 to 98% of their income was from AdSense on their search. So it's like, okay, they do one thing well, and the rest, they have all these other projects that don't directly create any money for them. I mean, including that they were investing in things like wind energy, big wind energy farms, or what's the word, windmills or whatever. But they can do that. Whatever. If they want to do that, fine. They can do what they want. I don't have a problem with that. But for many, many reasons, I don't trust them, and I think that they're a little incompetent. I mean, it's not just about the wind farms. It's like project after project after project. Many of them they do for a while and then shut it down. Maybe it's okay because they have so much capital. They do so much different things, but Google's just kind of evil. They're kind of, I don't trust them at all. The way they do censorship on the tube and all that kind of stuff. The way that they kind of go after, I think they kind of go after competitors to the tube. During the election, I think they also messed with some stuff, but anyway, I don't trust Google. Who does, really? And So that's Android, but my experience with an Android phone was I bought this phone and I had no idea they had, like, for example, it had a golf game, stupid like cartoon golf game that I could not remove from the phone. It was stuck on there. To me, that's like buying something and it has this like permanent advertisement in it. It's basically the same thing. And that alone was just like not only unfathomable, but just utterly unacceptable, and just that if everything else had been amazing, that alone was reason to absolutely hate that device. And that wasn't directly Google that did that, but this is part of their, like, if you have a brand, part of what you have to do, the whole point of a brand is sort of to try to inspire confidence in the quality, right? To have some predictable minimum level of quality that is obtained, right? That's the whole point of a brand. And so if they're allowing the people who I don't think it's the people who make the phones. I think it's like Verizon or AT&T or whatever, the service provider, who they were allowed to install the software and then make it so I couldn't remove it. That's just so insulting. It's just, they treat you like a dog or a slave. It's absolutely disgusting. And so that put me, I don't know that I'll ever use an Android phone. That coupled with just my overall distrust of Google, I just don't really trust it at all. So I use an iPhone. Now, I'll get to this. I really am planning to eventually switch to a Linux phone. But let me describe my problem with the iPhone. I mean, there's just so many things. Like, I actually use most of the storage on the device. And when you do that, you have all kinds of weird, basically undefined behavior. Like, it'd be one thing if things would just crash and then, okay, it crashed and, maybe an error comes up, says you're out of storage. The app won't function correctly without some space. So please free up some space. I'd be like, fine, okay, I reached the limit. Let me go delete some videos or something. And actually, so like even the process of deleting videos and pictures was breaking down. And I vaguely, sort of almost in a paranoid way, associate maybe these bugs are coming from like Apple iCloud stuff, which I never wanted to participate ever in to begin with, but somehow I'm stuck in it. Maybe like, so I have 2 Apple accounts, and it's like, that's a nightmare also, because if you have an app store, you can only download apps from that region. So because I was in Japan, originally I was on the US store, but I also wanted to have access to the Japan store, to download local Japanese apps and have things in Japanese and all that. So I created 2 accounts, and that's just always been a nightmare, having 2 different accounts. It's a huge mess. Some of my stuff is on one account, some of it is on another, and if you change on your device from one account to the other, I don't even know how that's supposed to work. Like, what's like, your notes are supposed to be associated with, partly with iCloud potentially, but it depends on your options that you set. But then I hate iCloud. I want nothing to do with it at all. So I don't know why it's even coming up. But what will happen is this pop-up comes up saying, putting your PIN code to use iCloud just comes up, and I can't do anything except it won't let me continue using the phone until I type it in. So I'll do that. I'll type it in, and then 1 second later it pops up again. It just keeps popping up because it's in some kind of bugged loop, and it only does it a handful of times, usually between 3 to 6 times. Then I can go back to using my phone. Sometimes it'll just keep on going and I have to like turn off the phone. But okay, so it's a huge mess if you use all of your storage. And in fact, I saw it in front of my own eyes. This is kind of the last huge thing that broke the camel's back, but I watched it delete all of my notes right in front of my eyes. Just obliterated all of the data. Does that have something to do with iCloud and like changing things, or is it just because I'm out of storage on the phone? But why would it delete the stuff that's on the phone? And over the years, I've used iPhone for a long time, and numerous times I've lost all my notes. So then you say, well, okay, what you're doing wrong is that you're using all your storage. Okay. Well, in order to stop using all my storage, now what I normally do, and I do it on this computer too. In fact, this actual video, I only have like 1 gigabyte free, so potentially this could just stop. And if it does, since I've mentioned that, I'm just going to upload it as is, where it cut out. But I use the storage that I have generally, and I think that's a reasonable thing. But when you run into where you're running out of storage, then you look through your stuff and you decide, oh, okay, what will I get rid of? Maybe there's some game that I'll uninstall, whatever, an app that I'll uninstall. Then you do that. Then you have a little storage. Then you use it for a while, and it becomes full, and then you repeat the process. For me, that's normal. Now, so you might say, well, leave like 10% of your iPhone storage open. Well, what I have to do to accomplish that, I have to get all this media, photos, and videos, because when I'm browsing the internet on my phone or whatever, I take a lot of screenshots, like as notes, basically. So I have like almost 100,000 photos on the device. I have to figure out how to get everything onto a computer. And actually, I bought a hard drive that's like 10 terabytes or something. So I'll do that. Put the hard drive in. I got to put it in my computer. I think I want to figure out how to encrypt the drive, because if it has, I don't know, like a video of a past girlfriend or something, like it's not just for my privacy, like there might be stuff that shouldn't get out there into the world. So I want to be responsible. I got to encrypt it. I might want to use Linux actually instead to handle all that data. So I got to figure out how to encrypt this drive. And it's like, I got other things I'm working on, other things I'm doing. I'm busy. I don't want to figure out how to... Now, I know how to install the hard drive. That's easy into my machine, my desktop. But I don't want to figure out about the encryption and thinking, well, should I just do everything on Linux? Should I stay on Windows? What should I do? I don't want to think about all that right now. But Apple is basically forcing me to do this. And that's where I get back to where they treat you like a dog. Basically, the device becomes almost unusable once you run out of storage. Because it's part of a bigger pattern with Apple. See, they don't even have an instruction manual, right? Like, imagine creating all this technology and not having some kind of user's manual. Like, even if the user manual is just an overview and subject to change and all this stuff, like, at least have something. They have no user's manual of any kind, as far as I know. And it's always been that way with the iPhone. So there's no definitive source to actually figure out how everything works. I think that's possibly the most annoying thing. Like, if I could just go somewhere online, find the information, and figure out how all this stuff is supposed to work, like all the stupid stuff with iCloud and how apps really, I don't know, just a million things that you might have questions about. There's no manual, there's no instructions. And then, so when I have my Notes app and it just deletes all the data right in front of me, notes that I've taken over the years with the phone, it's absolutely insane. And I know the kind of bug that they have in their programming that would cause that. Basically, instead of just keeping the information in storage and then like being very careful when you about how you treat it, which is what you should do, basically they take all that data, put it in memory, and then do a bunch of stuff, including it's just obviously a stupid bug, and it's happened multiple times, and that they've destroyed all my data. But many apps just totally stop working. There's no. I mean, YouTube will stop working correctly. Gmail will stop. Basically, like lots of different apps, they need to write to storage to save information on the phone. I mean, that's perfectly reasonable. That's perfectly reasonable, but the fact that you don't have a manual, the fact that your Notes app is unusable, it's a basic thing that I want. Like, all I really want for my phone is to be able to browse the web, watch YouTube. I can play chess, but I can do that in the browser. And I would like to be able to take notes, but I knew that the Notes app was unreliable and I might lose all my data. I already knew that. And to watch it destroy all that data in real time, right in front of me, while I had the Notes app open, was pretty eye-opening. And on top of that, like Apple, totally untrustworthy company, totally untrustworthy. They act so smug and like they're very they act like they're a very ethical company. Like they make these decisions and they're like, well, we've thought very carefully about what was correct with the ethics here. But if you have something minor wrong with a laptop, for example, like a cracked screen, or you just need a new battery, you try to bring it in to them, they will try to... They have like this whole policy of trying to get people to buy new computers rather than repair it. And actually, that by itself, I'm okay with. They're a business. They're for profit. They have strategies. But don't act all holier than thou. Don't act like you're so moral. Just be upfront about being a business. And so the Notes app is a buggy piece of garbage that's completely unusable trash. But they're actively developing this Apple Vision Pro, so I've had enough of it. I hate it. I deeply hate it because I want my technology that I purchased to be my slave. I don't want to be a slave to my technology. And that is one reason when you get into tech, when you get into programming, it's a very common thing that you sort of gravitate eventually towards Linux. There are other kinds of sort of free operating systems. Free as in freedom operating systems. There's BSD and other stuff. But Linux is by far the most famous. So it's free and open source, right? It's really free in both ways. But so you gravitate towards that eventually because you want to have control over your system. I mean, I don't want to even think about the things that bother me with Windows right now because, as you can see, I'm using it. But I sort of ping pong. I spend a year or two on one of the three, Windows, Mac, or Linux, until something bothers me too much. I mean, Linux is great, but sometimes you can get things done faster if you're not on Linux, basically. That's just kind of reality. If you're like, if I went into work and I have a work computer at the office, I would rather that's not in Linux, because there I'm just about getting things done. I don't care if my operating system isn't exactly to my liking. Another thing that bothers me immensely is all these pop-ups, like so many pop-ups. And when I first switched to Linux, this was years ago, I used Linux every day for a few years. Um, when I first switched and I installed Arch, vanilla Arch Linux, and there's just no system pop-ups, just nothing. Well, I hadn't installed anything for it. You can install system notifications and all this stuff, but I hadn't installed it, so there's just absolutely nothing. And it felt so good. Now, if you open a browser, you could get sort of pop-ups in a browser. That too is annoying. But they're like the Apple iPhone or the Mac. If you're on a Apple laptop, there'll be all these pop-ups. Also, like system pop-ups, they let applications do things. They also do this thing on the Apple laptop that absolutely I hate so much, where it allows an app or program to take control of what workspace you're on. It will switch the workspace over to that app all of a sudden. That's totally insane. That's just insane old clown world stuff to me. Because imagine you had a bunch of private data over on that workspace, and then you're like talking to an acquaintance or something, and then it just will switch your workspace without asking. Wow. And so, and Apple, like when they do updates on iPhone, like they made this update a few years ago where the latest video that you were watching, the title of the video would show up on the screen when you just, like when you're not even logged into the phone, when you just, what's the word? You push any button on the phone, even though it's locked. And then it will sometimes say the previous video, that the name of the video that the person was watching, including, adult stuff. So like they do that kind of stuff. And if you're paying attention to every update and all the changes, then I guess you're that's what you have to do, right? And then these companies, they are constantly pushing you to update, and even though, so like, there's two sides of the coin there, because mainly if it ain't broke, don't fix it is my mentality. Like, I'm happy with things, how things are, then I don't want to update. But for security reasons, cybersecurity reasons, it's important to regularly update. So I do regularly update because I think it's important. But just, I want to update on my own terms, and kind of like the way Microsoft, and I guess you can go in and disable all this stuff, but it's like, it's there by default, so you have to learn how to disable it. And there's just all these things that get automatically updated, that change, and if you're busy, you don't have time to constantly be checking all the things that they're changing all the time. So it just happens to your device, basically. And this is chaos. So a lot of these things, some of these things I've mentioned are kind of inexcusable. Most of the things I mentioned maybe are, you kind of understand. Like Microsoft used to have big problems with security. They were totally awful with Windows. So that's why they really push people to update, because they want their devices to be secure, because it reflects on their reputation. So I kind of understand that. So I'm not even saying, like, actually right now so Apple, Google, Microsoft, if you asked me in 2007, I hated Microsoft the most. If you ask me right now, actually, of those, Microsoft is the least bad for me. They're just kind of these nerds who make kind of bad overall decisions. Like, if you look at them, they have like I'm talking like Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer. They don't really have any fashion sense at all. They're just, not like Apple people or whatever. So they're just kind of doing things that don't make sense sometimes. But not that you need fashion sense. It's just like, there's a video of Steve Ballmer acting like a complete clown. And it's just common sense not to act how he was acting. And yeah, so it's just a huge mess. And I haven't even talked about programming languages and the fact that there's no programming language that I really feel good about recommending to people, and that's sad because one of the things I kept thinking in my first couple of years is I want to like get in there and figure all these things out, and then I can help other people climb up and recommend good languages, the best language to them, and all this stuff. It's pretty complicated. There's not one language that I can really recommend. It's kind of everything's kind of a mess in the whole programming world. But I'm not going to. But a lot of it's inevitable. But I think we can do better. I think we need something in the future. Hopefully, is going to be better. But I don't want to talk about all that right now. So this was enough for today. So thank you, and yeah, have a good one. Bye.